Hello and welcome to another Office Hours capsule. That's right. Capsule. Like a little, you get it? Because it's the TheAstroPub, and you got it. Welcome. This is a little small section of my Office Hours live stream where I pull out the latest news or my thoughts on certain specific things and record it specifically for YouTube and for podcast format. If you're listening to this on the new Unpodcast, you can always check that out. If you want to see this on podcasts and you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link down below in the description you can use. It should be on apps. It's on Spotify for podcasters, and that goes to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and a bunch of other ones as well. So feel free to check that out. It's a great resource. For those of you who don't have a lot of bandwidth and don't want to constantly fuddle with YouTube when you're trying to do stuff, because I know a lot of y'all like to listen to this. This is the Squadron 42 monthly report. Now, before I get into this, remember, if you enjoy this, hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and I want to hear your thoughts down below, as always. Got to get through all that stuff. But for those of you who don't know, we've been doing this for years now. The concept is that I will read through the entirety of the Squadron 42 monthly report. This is not a summary. This is a full breakdown of what is available to read. I always suggest that you read it yourself. There's nothing wrong with summaries, but if you try to rely on summaries to get your information for Star Citizen, you're going to be let down because there are some things that people will take out of context that will break down on, like, there's just some stuff that's going to happen where that person who's doing the summary has to summarize it. So they're going to have to take what they think is the most important and give you that information. And perhaps things that you're looking for is in that monthly report, but you just weren't able to do it because you're relying on the summaries. So that's why I do these read-throughs, because I think it's a service for people who want to have all the information. I'm still going to give my own interpretations and give some context for some of the stuff that's brought up, because we do read this every month. So some stuff I'll see, oh yeah, I've heard about that before, and so on and so forth. That's kind of the prequel. Let's get into this for Squadron 42 for May 2023. So the first thing I'm going to say is this is a different format. This is a brand new format, which if you watch this later, we'll see, because if you watch this on this coming weekend, when it gets released, be prepared for a video that'll come out next Wednesday of me talking about my theories on what's going on with Squadron 42, and a little bit of history as well. But this is another one of those things kind of adds to that pile. Why did they change the format for Squadron 42, the monthly reports? That seems a weird thing for them to do. But this is the May 2023. Let's start with I'll read the whole thing. This is a cross-posted report that was recently sent out via the monthly Squadron 42 newsletter. We're publishing this a second time as a com link to make it easier for the community to reference back to. Welcome to the May Squadron 42 monthly report. Enclosed, you'll find details on the latest progress made across the campaign, including capital ship behaviors, buddy AI, and FPS weapon AI. Thank you for your continued support of Squadron 42. AI content. Throughout May, AI content progressed with the remaining medical behaviors tasks. Following this, the full medical flow can now be demonstrated in the behavior test map. Additional animation variations for interacting with cupboards, beds, trays, and sinks, both with and without data pads, were created too. So, once signed off, the behavior will be implemented in the Stanton and Krugari infirmaries. Okay, so infirmary AI behavior. The AI, Krugari is the Krugari, I believe, is the javelin that you're on at some point. I could be wrong. It could be the station that That could be the station that is the... I'm blanking on the name. The Shubin mining station. I think that's probably what it is. It's probably the Shubin mining station. The Krugeri. AI content continued work on the Fight Club Caged Arena last month, implementing the entry bouncer and rush animations for crowd spectators. For the latter, the crowd's intensity varies pre, mid, and post-fight. As part of this, speed quantity fight animations were developed, with data coming from a recent motion capture shoot. Fight Club! That's awesome. And chat's correcting me, that's Archeon Station. That's right, that is called Archeon Station. So the Krugeri's got to be the Javelin. Let me look up what a Krugeri is real quickly. Sorry for this kind of live show, y'all. Live recording. Oh, no. The Krugeri is a Bengal carrier. The UES Krugeri is the Bengal carrier, one of the Bengal carriers from Squadron. I think it's the Bengal carrier that that Admiral Bishop is on. So that's interesting to note that they're working on the Bengal carrier animations. Or Bengal carrier behaviors. The team also worked on speed processed locomotion animations for the NPCs expressing severe pain. Part of this involving implementing animations for characters standing and locomoting while exhibiting sickness. They then proceeded to implement polished drinking animations into the SIT-050 usable area and created speed drunk locomotion and animations for inebriated NPC movements. Drunk locomotion animations were also created for NPCs holding cups. Finally, AI content implemented mobiGlass and datapad overlay locomotion animations to allow characters to seamlessly interact with digital interfaces. So we got drunk animations for AI, Fight Club animations, and medical behavior AI. Okay. Finally, AI content implemented mobiGlass and datapad overlay locomotion animations to allow characters to seamlessly interact with digital interfaces. Okay. AI features. AI features continued to work on the Buddy AI. Now, buddies cheat when finding supplies, looting ammunition that doesn't match their current weapon. They will also fully restock when they do so, replenishing their grenades and medipen. This also finished the first pass of the boss fight that challenges players to counter or block before they can attack, while progress was made on the targeting and melee attacks for key enemy behaviors. Okay, so this is bringing me back to Star Souls, Dark Citizen, Star Souls, I think is what we joked about it. There is a full-blown melee combat that's going on. I am not even kidding. For those of you who don't know, this is a big thing. The Vanduul want to engage in melee. So if you're looking at a Vanduul in game, when you fight them, they will close the distance to try to stab you with their weapons rather than shoot you from distance. And most of your weapons are not going to kill them because their armor, they have natural armor on their bodies, so they'll be able to take a lot of even heavy rounds before going down. So there's a full-blown like animations and like movement animations and all sorts of stuff, a full-blown animation set that they've been working on for Vanduul. There's also another kind of outlaw group, the Screaming Galsons, I think is what they're called, who also have melee combat and prefer a melee combat, who are a big part of the story as well, in some way, shape, or form. I think there may be just side stories, but it'll be interesting to do that. So counter or block before they can attack, while progress is made for targeting melee attacks for a key enemy behavior. That sounds like Dark Souls, because we've joked about that before, Dark Souls stuff, but yeah. AI features implemented the core components of a systematic and boss fight sniper functionality, enabling the designers to finish off and provide feedback. So we've also got a boss fight that's a sniper. I swear to God, this game is not what anyone thinks it is. And nobody, or very few people, fully go through these things. So it's insane to think about that. And don't think that these boss fights are just going to stick to Squadron. They're going to take some of these ideas and put them in Star Citizen. The end of the boss fight at something like the Siege of Orison, that's going to be a boss fight. That guy is going to be a lot harder to kill in the future. I can guarantee you they'll take some of these behaviors and put it in there. So that's why it's important to listen to this too, even if you're just interested in Star Citizen. On the animation side, the team wrapped up the performance capture for various features and implemented the full animation set for a collection of characters with a unique combat style. AI Tech. Last month, AI Tech progressed with their final major Squadron 42 features and addressed feedback on older initiatives. People told me that this has a lot of polishing and final. That's a huge final. The final major Squadron 42 features for AI Tech? That's pretty big. That means their AI systems are done. Of course, it says progress, not finished, so who knows? They continue to improve the collision avoidance system to give better results when ground vehicles pass each other or NPCs. They also added support for driving along a predefined route, similar to how NPCs can move along. I'm getting raided, so thank you for that raid. Well, in the middle of this thing, Zero State. Shh, I'm reading the monthly report. Thank you. Thank you. And I hate the Redeemer. Sorry. You're coming in late to this presentation. You got to be quiet and get to the back. Enjoy the hopium. Chat's going crazy, being like, we heard you like the Redeemer. I don't. I really don't. All right. They also added support for driving along predefined loot, similar to how NPCs can move along a path. For this case, the designers can specify certain properties for the route, like the maximum permitted speed, which direction it should be driven, and if it should loop. Work then began on dynamic pathfinding regeneration feature to improve how NPCs find and follow alternative routes. For example, if a hazard, tree falling, vehicle stopping, fire hazard, etc., impacts a navigation mesh triangle, the navigation volume will notify all related paths and check if new requests are submitted. The first stage of this was implementing an anchor structure to keep track of the location's navigation meshes and triangle, which is notified when the triangle is created. These navigation anchors are then used to understand when parts of the triangle are modified and check if new pathfinding is needed. They also saw AI Tech begin investigating and implementing a solution for NPCs entering and exiting ships from EVA using the external doors of an airlock system. For this, they set up a ship and a seat access as a usable to allow NPCs to find their closest entry position point, fly to it, and trigger the right interaction. They also had to account for ship's rotational velocity and allowed NPCs to adjust their orientation as they approach. On the AI tool side, improvements continued for both the usable corridor and Apollo subsumption. For the usable corridor, optimizations were made to code and logic flow. They updated the visuals and changed a new usable data too. For Apollo, the team implemented find references functionality with support for subsumption functions. AI Tech also completed various support tasks, including flow graph nodes for all subsumption assignments to help the designers create scripted AI behaviors. More variable types to use as assignment inputs were added alongside support for usable and tactical point systems. Okay. AI vehicle features. The vehicle team progressed with their ongoing rework with combat AI. For those of you who don't know, they've been overhauling combat AI for vehicles for Squadron 42 for some time. They've already done the full overview, or most of the overhaul for FPS AI, which we saw bits of in last year's CitizenCon. It's gotten a lot better since then. It was already good then. It's gotten a lot better then. Now they're trying to do the same thing with ship AI. And that process is ongoing. But again, once we reach a point where this stuff can even be put into Star Citizen without Star Citizen collapsing on itself, it should improve the overall experience. Last month, they hooked up various events for the AI to react to across the game. This is the final step before integrating the new combat AI into all encounters across Squadron 42. So they're almost done with it. After that, it's playtesting over and over again in situ in the levels of the game so we can judge and adjust difficulty, pacing, and so on to fine-tune the experience. AI team. That AI team is masterful. They've been doing a lot of work, and they're very good at their job. Them and the level design teams I've seen a lot of quick, rapid progression. All the teams are doing really well, but those are the ones that I always see as stand out as like they get on it real quick. The team also improved the logic of how AI ships join splines to make it smoother and more natural looking. Ground avoidance during atmospheric flight was also worked on. The aim is to have the AI try their best to not collide with the ground when in combat while behaving as naturally as possible. Don't hit the ground, it's a good thing. Animation. In May, the animation team worked on various skill level based takedowns, movement in 0G, and swimming. For AI, the team continued creating assets for background actions to give life to various locations. This will continue as levels are playtested. A second enemy class animation style was developed alongside a knife fight and melee enemy class. For those who don't know, there's human melee weapons and equipment. The streaming Galsons are a big use of their melee weapons. And of course, the Vandul are big melee weapon uses. So there's going to be some different varieties of enemies. So you'll see some enemies that will charge you with melee weapons and some enemies which will stay back with weapons. It'll depend on where you are and your situations you're in. The team also continued to create assets for the various behavior lines and wild lines for both combat and non-combat AI. The mocap team spent the majority of the month shooting performances and delivering data for gameplay and cinematics. Very good. Engine. I am not an engine seer. I do not know the will of the Omnissiah. I am not a Starfleet engineer. I cannot turn rocks into replicators. I am me, a simple, smooth-brained bartender who is reading you things from the internet. So I may not know any of the stuff that they're saying in the engine tech stuff. So if you do, let me know down below in the comments so I can translate this tech speak into actual words and understand it a little bit better. That being said, let's get started with that. The core engine team progressed with their work on StarBuild, adding the remaining Linux support. StarBuild is now on feature parity with the old cold build system and will be rolled out to other departments soon. I don't know what StarBuild is, but I know it has something to do with how the game engine, well, it obviously does. I don't know what it is. For the renderer, the team started removing legacy Gen 12 code. There's a lot to remove, but this will result in leaner and easier to maintain renderer code when complete. The core engine team also progressed with generic shape system, adding editor support to save generic as well as remaining shapes. Multiple segments will be added before it's handed to the designers to use. For Mem Replay 2.0, the team are currently adding more features, including file open dialog, faster loading, and async symbol resolving to get it ready for wider use. They're also adding optimizations and continuing to stabilize their feature stream to integrate it back into the main development stream. Last month, the physics team focused on improving bug fixing the new method for tracking unique geometry parts. They then improved cloth simulation for better simulation results, updated the rope and pulley systems, and added cantilever simulation support. Rope tech is super detailed. They've been working on rope tech for years now, really dialing in the rope, and they've been adding a bunch of other stuff. So when you hear people saying like, "Oh, beams, citizen, it's nothing but beams," it's not. They're doing stuff with rope. There's a lot of stuff they want to do with rope. It's pretty insane. Features, gameplay. Last month, the gameplay features team updated the character customizer. This included adding a new sculpting mode that allows players to select and drag an anchor point on the face to change the size and shape of a particular face zone, such as the nose, ear, and chin. People have been wanting this for years now. A simple sculpting mode. So it looks like we're going to get it in Squadron, which means it'll eventually port over to Star Citizen. Further detailing work was done on the firing range, mostly around joining and leaving. Feedback was also actioned on the UI to integrate it better into the environment. New collectible system was created that players will be able to find, pick up, and stow during gameplay. These items will then populate the player's quarters as part of the collectibles system. That's something they've been working on for a bit. Little collectibles. Again, I've heard people say, well, aren't collectibles something you do at the very end of a development? Not necessarily. Every game is developed differently. There's no set rules of what comes in where and when. This important thing is to see how the overall shape of the game is coming out to. Like, what are they working on overall, and are they play testing it? How much of the stuff is done? Portions here and there. And a lot of the stuff we've been seeing over the last couple of months seems to indicate that there is some significant progress made towards a final look, a final collection, like an attempt to put the game together as one whole rather than individual levels and see how it plays, rather than does this function at all, sort of thing. All right. Where were we? The front end also received a new difficulty option. This exposes various modifiers to the AI, health, and weapon attributes to allow the design team to balance the game depending on the player's desired experience. A new feature to allow the designers to create and save damage maps was created too, which enables them to apply pre-damaged areas to ships. Following on from the recent star map work, the team is now developing the area map. This will render a holographic view of a player's current environment, either from within the star map or as part of the visor, with markers for players, characters, mission objectives, and more. Very cool. Features vehicle. Last month, work continued on the control surface flight model. The team implemented special handling for ships in gas-filled zero-G locations, such as gas clouds. While ships still favor thrusters in these situations, they'll experience drag and lift that slightly impacts how they feel. Vehicle features also iterated on UI and VFX for communicating the quantum system state. They also began working on began utilizing in-world VFX for this purpose, which allowed them to pare back the UI. The feedback on this has been positive so far. I'm always a big fan of removing UI, because UI gets really cluttered, especially in CIG's case. The new feature for spawning waves of AI ships inside carriers was ticked off, similar to an FPS spawn closet. Now AI will spawn on landing pads within carriers, take off, and join the fight. This feature can be used to support large battles by naturally spawning ships. Very cool. The Intelligent Flight Control System, the IFCS, received updates last month. That's a pretty big thing. They usually don't touch the IFCS much. For example, the team worked on a bespoke relative throttle that allows for players to assign target velocity when the throttle is untouched. Various quality of life improvements were made to support this, including a trap for settings target speed including a trap for setting target speed to 0, a nonlinear rate of change for improved precision at lower speeds, and an improved UI for displaying the throttle. Some throttle work stuff, it looks like. Work on vehicle UI continued, with the team creating a physical hangar terminal for modifying a ship's loadout before missions. This enables players to view an inventory of available weapons and items, compare them against each other, and equip them on the ship, to the ship in the hangar. Very interesting. So they're doing a system specifically for Squadron to flag as a kind of loadout manager specifically for the game. I wonder if that will port over to Star Citizen as well. Multifunction displays, MFDs, also received various updates, including a UI pass to make them larger, simpler, and easier to read. The new MFD system also allows players to cast some screens to their visors, with the team changing the layout and aspect ratio of screens when this occurs. This makes better use of screen space and allows for certain elements to be more prominent. Furthermore, after the work last month, MFDs were enabled for wider use in the company. That's something I've been seeing a lot of. There seems to be an emphasis on being able to pull the MFDs off of the MFDs and put it on your HUD. I thought that's what they were doing, and this is the first concrete confirmation that they're trying to do that, which is very cool. So in the past, you could do things like when you targeted an enemy, like on your HUD, you would see pop up the kind of status of that enemy, the shields they're facing, the damage on the ship, all of those things. And then they kind of messed around with it, moved it. It sounds like you can just start pulling those up and put them onto your visor itself if you want to customize it, which is very cool. There's a brand new UI system that they've been working on for Squadron, which is going to port over to Star Citizen, including a star map, which they have yet to fully talk about, which I am assuming we'll see at CitizenCon, because it's been pretty well used by now. It's getting to that point. Most of the MFD system is finished. It now just needs to be kind of adapted for everything. So. Gameplay story. Last month, the gameplay story team worked on various scenes involving Stanton's quartermaster. These updates were requested by design with the goal of getting the scenes to integrate properly with AI behavior. The new mocap data was used to update some significant scenes in the medbay, ensuring characters interact correctly with the latest swiveling chair setup. It was great to see these scenes updated to use exactly the same setup as the AI, which should make the scenes very robust and future-proof. Gameplay team. All right, I'm going to do this because you need to understand. They have developed a tech for players to do this. And I'm not kidding. They have a full tool that allows your players to spin around in swivel chairs. No joke. Such grace, you know. I was doing nice. I wasn't going to push myself off and then spin around out of control and fall over. I don't want to end up on live stream fails that hard. In May, gameplay story began setting up 8 new scenes, bringing their total to 290. They also polished, pasted, and updated props in several scenes to ensure they were fully up to date. The team also continued their set up operator seats, working to establish proper metrics and solid foundations for these complicated assets. Automated testing of the entities achieved a 100% pass rate, so they can now move on to reviewing, improving, and approving the required animations. I need the AI to react to stuff, yes. Graphics and VFX programming. Graphics feature teams spent the month working on performance improvements and new features, including screen place shadows, improvements to quantum jump tunnels, and render texture zone culling. A GPU memory allocator and an upgraded resource cache compiler were among the new performance-boosting upgrades, while evolving temporal super resolution, an automated upscaling system that can now upsample opaque objects, officially passed its first milestone. Global illumination was well underway. So far, the first iterations of a hash map-based radiance cache, ray generation code, and ray tracing prototype were compiled. Improvements to Gen 12's validation error debugger were made to improve the accuracy of bug detection for faster issue assessment. In preparation for deferred render graph execution, Vulkan's frame synchronization was improved. Issues with gaps in pipeline resource sets at bind time were resolved with a remapping update that uses continuous resource set layouts. The Planet Tech team started finalizing quantum obstacle generation with generic shapes in asteroid fields. A collision issue detector and wear, dirt, and paint modifiers were also added to the Rastar tool. Rastar tool is the tool that they use to generate planetary outposts, though I think they're also using it for space stations. I could be wrong. I know they're using it on asteroids for asteroid bases as well. So, ongoing improvements to the biome builder will reduce the constant spawn/despawning, which in turn will relieve the physics team of large destruction queues. Water can now be simulated in engine and features a new disturbance component improvements. VFX finished with the new effect setup for quantum travel and are now looking into lighting. Lighting emitters are being refactored to decouple from targeting, and the team is investigating how to use current prototypes to spawn lighting from gas clouds. A crash that occurred when particle emitters attempted to resize using the buffer of 0 was also fixed. Level design. Last month, level design focused on their two main locations, the Stanton and the Kugari capital ships. So the Kugari and the Stanton. The Stanton is the Idris that you're on, and the Kugari is the Bengal carrier that you're on, apparently. Alongside general scene maintenance and bug fixing, they looked into scene handshakes that transition NPCs into their required behaviors. This involved ensuring characters are prepped to transition, are pose matched, have holstered held items, and more. Probably from scene, like cutscenes to actual gameplay. They also updated the Stanton's quartermaster scenes to reflect revised AI vendor flow without negatively affecting performance. The team then continued to work on the AI schedules for the Stanton, which has an 80-person crew playing out various behaviors around the ship. With this rollout, we have to keep tabs on NPC's gate crashing scene content. For example, if the player is in a somber scene with a colleague discussing the horrors of war, we don't want an NPC barging in with "Hello, Lieutenant," and jumping into the console. Level design team. That's true. This is another thing they've been working on. So the game is really broken down, and I think it comes down probably further down as well, into three major elements. You have your social elements, your FPS elements, and your flight elements. And that's the way that they look at it. So social is at least a third of the game. So a lot of your time, the reason why you're like, oh, why are they spending so much time on bed deformation or behaviors in a mess hall? It's because that's a third of your game. Socializing with the crew is part of the experience. It's part of what you're supposed to do. You do that in every Chris Roberts game. And that will unlock or change different aspects of the game as well. Depending on how well they like you or not, may determine if they do things or not, depending on how you've treated them or order them in battle as well. So, not kukri, it's the kugari, which is a type of lion. It's a sub-Saharan lion. It's called the Panthera leo krugeri. It's krugeri. Like Kruger. Narrative. In May, Narrative held a performance capture shoot focusing on additional combat and social wildlines. The goal was to capture a wide variety of voices to populate the universe while also maximizing the effectiveness of the content so that it remains within a reasonable scope. Narrative also synced with design on their recent gameplay progress to review adjustments and ensure that dialogue continues to function as intended. In some instances, the team made suggestions on how the revised gameplay scenarios could better align with the emotional tone for the moment. For example, if a puzzle scenario occurs during a particularly stressful sequence of the game, narrative design will discuss ways to maintain the emotional underpinning during the puzzle. Meanwhile, progress continued on the text items needed across the entirety of the game, including collectibles, Galactopedia entries, and Moby-Glass UI elements. It's good to know. R&D. In May, the R&D team continued improving the temporal renderer mode for atmospheric and volumetric clouds. Additionally, planetary terrain height map generation was optimized to eliminate frame rate hitches. Aside from using a more suitable partitioning schemes for the tessellation of terrain patches, the changes also include a terrain quad viewport calling before further tessellation of the GPU. The resulting height maps are later used to render large terrain shadows and to spawn GPU particles on the ground. UI. The UI, art, and design teams completed their work on modular fluff scenes, getting them up in different UI styles for various locations. They're now ready to be handed over to art and the FPS teams so they can be added to levels. They also implemented new FPS weapon screens for the different brands within the game, and worked alongside the FPS and vehicle teams on augmented reality AR markers, which are floating UI elements that show players where their objectives and targets are. Last month, the art was signed off, and the files were prepared for use in-game. Work on the final visor UI also continued with the AI features team. Final, again, using all those words, final. This will include weapons and ammunition information, notifications, and mission objectives. They also applied improved shaders courtesy of the graphics team to make the UI appear more holographic. The UI tech team continued to improve their tools, including making performance improvements and adding additional ways to debug the more complex scenes. They also further developed the new interior and mini-maps, which will bring a significant improvement to in-game navigation. And lastly, VFX. Last month, VFX revisited gas cloud tunnels, working closely with the design and art to create new hazards that can occur inside the tunnel networks. Progress was also made on weapon effects, while support for art and design teams continued across a variety of locations. So, pretty big, I would say. There's a lot of big stuff here. This is the first mention I've seen of the Krugery in the monthly reports. Literally, I have never heard them mention it in the monthly reports. It's been mentioned in a couple of other sources, but not in the monthly reports. They're actively working on a lot of the more fluff scenes, as it were, things that add in more variety. The UI is working on the MFDs. They're working on the, they didn't say the star map, but it's part of the star map. And a lot of these other kind of elements. There's a lot of finalization here. Narrative is going in with design to try to make sure the scenes flow right. We see level design talking again about the Stanton and the Krugery, and making sure everything feels right. We've got the gameplay stories is some of this stuff. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that. But we're seeing a lot of gameplay story elements. We're seeing vehicle behaviors, including improvements to the IFCS, control surface models, UI and VFX communications. With gameplays, we're seeing collectibles, as well as the firing range, damage maps, lots of stuff with AI, final work for AI and animations. A lot of this stuff sounds like they're wrapping up. If not wrapping up the game, then wrapping up a major portion of the game. Like, moving to another phase, maybe. I'm not going to sit here and say that Squadron 42 is entered beta or anything like that. But there's a lot of use of the way that they're talking about it. Feels like they're over the hump of the design and or the technical stuff, and are into the design parts of the game. How levels flow, how players interact with one another, how players interact with NPCs, how NPCs should be moving, so on and so forth. So it's some good sign. I would not keep. Don't bust out the champagne yet. You know, this is still could just be hopium right here. So it's important to keep this in mind. And with that, remember to watch us every month. We'll be back next month for another read-through of Squadron 42's monthly report. So make sure you've hit that subscribe button so you can come join us live. And of course, I want to hear your thoughts. Am I just high on hopium, or does that sound pretty final in some cases to you? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, join us live on Thursdays at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub, youtube.com/TheAstroPub live to watch this live and ask your own questions live. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.